Well, welcome everyone to the unveiling of Underhill's second historic roadside marker. That's probably a pretty big deal for a little town. So uh, my remarks are just a lot of thank yous, a few more remarks about the marker itself, and then I have some maybe some tidbits about Udney Hay that you may find interesting. If you're in the back and you can't hear me, just feel free to come up. I can't get my voice any louder than it is. Um, so first of all, the thank yous to Bob Devlin and Jessamy Pratt for agreeing to have this marker on their property and picking a good spot as well. And thanks to Brad Holden who agreed to your spot. It is where it is. There's other people to thank. A quick shout out to Tim Chamberlain because he turned on a dime to do this for Mount Mansfield TV. And the reason this marker is here, the one person who deserves the lion's share of the credit is this tall person in the background, Eli Dandurand. Without him and all he did for the research on Udney Hay, we would not have this historic marker. So Eli, you deserve a round of applause for us.
Thank you, Eli.
By the way, he did a great presentation last November on the life and times of Udney Hay, and you can see that on our historicalsociety.org, underhillhistoricalsociety.org, the full hour of his talk. There's also other information about Udney Hay on our historical society. Another person to thank, as well as talk about the marker, is Laura, who's here. Laura Fleischman from the State Historic Preservation. You want to raise your hand, Laura? So it's a bit of a story. Eli and I submitted the application, which allows you to have 762 characters on one side for the text. We send it off to her. We get back. She goes, "There's too much to talk about with this guy Udney Hay. We have to do something somewhat unusual. There's only 75-ish of this type of marker because it's two-sided. You have to come around the other side, just like you have to turn over the card that we handed out to read the other side of it. Most markers are just repeated on the other side. So Laura stunned us when she decided to take matters into her own hands and put that add to that text. So, but I know Udney's listening. You did do a lot, buddy. So, you know, you're well worth two sides. Maybe some of you know, but there's about 350 roadside markers. You know, that's quite a compliment to our little state, that we have preserved our history such as we have. That's a lot of markers, again, in a little state. So I think we should think good of that. And the fact that this one is up here on Poker Hill, is even more. I'm going to probably drift. I already drifted from my talk. So Udney Hay owned two 100-acre lots here. And he owned, maybe I'll come back to that. We did a little bit more research on Udney, and I thought we'd share some tidbits. The first thing about Udney is to understand in Scotland, Ireland, we know there was a lot of clans. Well, the major clan in it, where he was from, which is a little village 6 miles north of Aberdeen, a city in northeast Scotland, the major clan of that era and that time was Udney. His father largely was part of the clan, and so to give his son immediate identity for his future in the clan, he named him Udney. So right now, if you decide to go to your internet and Wikipedia, there's a lot of Udney out there near Aberdeen, and there's an Udney Castle, for example. There's an Udney State Park and other structures, not to go any further. One sideways tidbit is the Udney Castle, which was built in they believe the late 1400s. The people who own it now are descendants. 500 plus years later, it's still in the family. Amazing.
Did any of them come?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So Udney grew up in a family of some means. So it wasn't too hard scrabble for him. In fact, he attended Aberdeen University, which is still there. It's an ongoing university in northeast Scotland. It happens to be on the North Sea. But he didn't finish. He got the wanderlust and decided to come to the New World. So he lands in Quebec, and I won't paraphrase too much of the text, but I'll justify certainly what's on the text in the next minute or two or three. So at his eulogy or the funeral service, the Reverend President, his name was Sanders, of the University of Vermont, the young university, spoke on behalf of Udney. And in his talk, he talked of two parts which play throughout the theme of the text of Udney, or his life. One is unquestionable integrity, and he was a philosopher. I use that term rather than political activist, but we would think of it in that vein. So unquestionable integrity is easy to understand. Anybody who's going to do procurement as a quartermaster for an army or a purchasing agent, such as he was later, if you don't have integrity, you're not going to last in that job. If you're not trustworthy with all the vendors that you're going to have to deal with, all the people, all the farmers, all the people making, boot makers, whatever it is, you're not going to last long. So his integrity thread runs through his whole life. Then, which is even more amazing, he was a successful merchant in Quebec. So here's where the political activist comes. Here's where the political activist actually starts. For some reason, there's an accounting of his assets when he decided to leave Canada. He had 1,998 British pounds of assets. How much of it was liquid, I don't know. However, he walked away from that for a cause of freedom and liberty in this new place. Actually, it was still called New Hampshire Grants, but for this new cause of freedom in the colonies of America, Who does that? 1,998 British pounds was a fortune. So there's where already the signals are there that he's not only has integrity, but he's a philosopher or a man chasing a cause, a political activist. So I'm going to fast forward, and I only have a few more minutes, is to 1794, the Thomas Jefferson, or I should back up to one other detail of how well he was thought of. Ethan Allen died in 1789, as you all know, and guess who was the executor of his estate? Udney Hay. I mean, that's pretty amazing when you think about it. The lost my way here. The 1794, Thomas Jefferson decides to start a new party called the Democratic Republican Party. Well, George Washington didn't even want a second party. He even spoke and wrote, no, we only want one party. Have two parties, it's too confusing, you know. So, well, Thomas Jefferson and we'll call it the Virginia elite didn't buy into that. So that was the beginning of local government. They were all about having local self-government, i.e., that was the beginning of states' rights. So that's 1794, and now he's making his way to Burlington and Underhill. So he's only in Underhill from 1796 to about 1806, or give or take. So he buys lots all over the place because he really wasn't a 24/7 farmer. That wasn't his calling. And he was a land speculator. He not only owned a lot of lots here in Underhill, he owned more lots in Westford. So, in fact, I read a transaction when he sold, where's Jessamy and Bob, they sold this property. He sold all 150 acres and moved away. But anyway, moved to Burlington. But so here's what a guy did in 10 years in Underhill. I mean, it's just amazing. Well, first of all, in the census of 1800, there were only 39 families and 212 people in Underhill. Well, how does a guy living all the way up here have a voice all over the place in all the, the cities of government? He was a prolific writer, writing what we would call op-eds, getting them published in Albany, Poughkeepsie, New York City, Philadelphia. So this guy had a lot of reach right from this plot of land. It boggles the mind when you think about it. So here's what he did in the short time he lived in Underhill. He was moderator of town meeting 4 times. He was on the select board for 3 one-year terms. He was a state legislature. He re-elected 3 times, 6 years. No, in those years you got elected every year, I think. And it was, so 6 years he served as a state legislator. Rewind to the beginning when he got here. He's the author of the Constitution of the Chittenden County Democratic Republican Party. This guy, like I said, he was no farmer. And the last thing is another compliment to his life. He was appointed to the Council of Censors, which were charged with the responsibility of making sure the 3 branches of local government, of the state government, follow the Constitution. That was in those days, that was the most prestigious committee to be asked to be on. So, you know, it's for a little town. I really think it's really quite something for us to have this individual and most deserving of having this roadside marker. So I'm done. I just wanted to ask if Eli wanted to say a few words or.
Oh yeah. So thank you, Roger. I don't really have a whole lot to add to that. I think that's great, and thanking everyone involved. Thank you, Laura and Roger and everyone involved in the town, and also Bob and Jessamy for allowing this to be here. I love these markers. I go out of my way often to go and see these around the state. I think it's a really great way of recording local history and having it preserved in a way that shares it with the community. So I think it's great for Underhill to have a second one here, and I appreciate everyone's efforts having this done. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, what do you think, everybody? Should we? I mean, the cover's only been up there an hour. Eli, come on. Brad.
All right. You gotta unsnap it.
Oh.
Wanna give it a pull?
All right. Wait.
Nice work.
All right. Thank you all for coming. It was a long time coming. It took 4.5 years from the beginning to today to see it.
Thank you, Roger, for all your work
Yeah.
with the Historical Society.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
For the town.
Thanks. Yeah.